Parliament may no longer be sitting, but the politics hasn't stopped. So to get across the latest, I'm joined now by the national editor at the Australian newspaper and Peter's Monday regular, Dennis Shanahan. Dennis, welcome to the program.
Good evening.
Chris Dennis, that's okay. My mother forgets my name sometimes too, that's okay.
I normally just nod to Peter.
Yes, exactly. Considering we talk each and every Saturday, that's very surprising.
Exactly.
As the economy continues its downward spiral, wage stagnation has come closer under the microscope, with Workplace Relations Minister Tony Burke announcing in a speech today Labor will legislate to stop employers slashing wages by getting pay deals axed. Now, what does this mean? Getting rid of enterprise agreements between staff and employers to determine your salary? We've not reached the 3-month mark of this government, Dennis, and already I see the sticky fingers of unions all over this.
Look, I think this is a very important speech from Tony Burke today. What we have to remember is that for the last 3 elections, Labor has been campaigning on lifting wages. Bill Shorten campaigned on it and Anthony Albanese campaigned on it. So it is absolutely fundamental to what Labor wants to do and what Labor has to do if it is to keep its political promises. Now, partly we're seeing that, they're talking about how the Fair Work Commission gave low wage earners a rise, 5%, and now they are now formally backing up to 25% pay increase for aged care workers. So what we're seeing is, pressure being put onto the Fair Work Commission, legitimate, through the government, and the idea that it's independent seems to be somehow lost as the government starts to talk about the Fair Work Commission. But I think that the rhetoric around today's speech is very important because it talks about the Job Summit. What we're actually going to see is a Job Summit that is going to be very different to the original accord of the ACTU and the Hawke government back then. Because what we're actually seeing is a government going in, accusing employers of conducting rorts, not encouraging enterprise bargaining, and just trying to talk about wage rises. Now, I think that this is a one-sided approach to a wages summit, a jobs summit, and a lot of the emphasis is on the union side and pushing up wages. So I think that the government is getting off to a very strong role in saying we are going to push up wages. That's what they've been saying. That's what they're going to do. What the outcome of that and what the impact on inflation, employment, jobs, we'll wait to see. But I think that speech today by Tony Burke is a real line in the sand for the Albanese government.
OK, just on the subs, Dennis, Defence Minister and Acting Prime Minister Richard Marles shifted again in this space. He's prioritising any option, including buying submarines from allies to fill our short-term capability gap. I'm struggling to keep up. He's had various positions on this, hasn't he?
Well, he has, but it's interesting to see that as Defence Minister, although he's Acting Prime Minister, that Richard Marles is starting to adopt the same position that Peter Dutton as Defence Minister had at the beginning of this AUKUS discussion, because it was Peter Dutton who raised the idea that maybe what we should have to do is lease nuclear submarines, not make them here in Australia, but lease them. Now, Richard Marles is talking about, yes, we'll look at this. We'll look at leasing, buying, whatever, and very importantly saying they'll put the national strategy, the national interest ahead of job creation. Now, I think this has been one of the big problems in the acquiring of large defence contracts. Too often they have been sidetracked by domestic political issues about job creation instead of prioritising the national interest and getting nuclear submarines as soon as possible.
Yes, that should be the priority. You are spot on. Look, after their success in the lower house last week in passing the climate change bill, they've got to get into the Senate now for negotiation. After modifying and altering the bill already, the Greens have announced they will support the legislation. But to pass the Senate, it now relies on the new crossbencher from the ACT, former Wallabies player David Pocock. Dennis, what demands is Pocock making of this bill?
Well, look, what we're seeing here is pressure on other areas of the bill. The Teal Independents and the Greens, they have supported the 43% carbon emissions floor by 2030. They've done that, so that's going to get through. So Anthony Albanese had a big win, he had a big headline win. The 43% he promised is going to be passed. But what we're seeing here is the real fight that is going to go on as the Greens and the Teals try to create themselves a bit more relevance. They've been cut out of the debate effectively by Anthony Albanese on the 43%. And what we're seeing here is David Pocock arguing about the credit scheme, the way that people can get credits, carbon credits by growing trees and various other carbon reduction processes, and what it is, they're fighting a fight elsewhere. Now, we also know that there's going to be a fight over the government's review of the mechanism that will govern how that 43% is applied to individual industries and individual companies. So what we've got, big headline passed, yes, big victory. What we've now got is a real fight over the detail and questioning on other parts of the legislation which could have the same impact or an even worse impact on some of the industries that will be affected by all of this sort of sideshow on other legislation.
Which can be rightly argued as an indirect carbon tax, but that's an argument for another day. I guess it comes as no surprise, Dennis. Last week, Water and Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek cancelled a Queensland coal mine licence. Here was Plibersek and former Nationals leader Barnaby Joyce on Breakfast TV this morning.
The reason I'm proposing to block this coal mine is because it's less than 10 kilometres from the Great Barrier Reef Marine National Park.
So we've got to be really, really careful of saying the word no. Like, we've also got to understand the reality we're in. If we want to become as strong as possible, as quickly as possible.
What concerns me, Dennis, is the security of our power. Will we ever see any new coal and gas developments in this country? And therefore, will we face blackouts as a result?
Well, look, the simple answer here is that the Labor government has always said that they will use environmental and financial background to decide whether projects go ahead. And yet they create the environmental web which makes them, and the financial pressure which makes them impossible to go ahead. And that's why we could very well see more projects cancelled and ultimately blackouts.
Base load power. Hello, Dennis Shanahan, great to have you on. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.